everything you see here, they created internally.
So this is a brand document that captures everything from the look and feel to the way that the menus are going to read, the packaging,
even the renderings. So these renderings are pretty decent, right? And so getting these from the get-go is the perfect scenario, right? Because you like, okay, you know what they like already, right? So it's like I said, it's the perfect scenario, but you always can make that scenario for yourself. You can make it if you just dig deep enough, right? I'm showing this because it's an easier document to just go through the information that's there, which should be the questions that you ask, regardless of whether there's a document or not, right? You have to know the history of the project. You have to know the location, transportation. How many people go there or don't go there? Is that the challenge? Things of that nature. And just to end your question, is all of the above, right? It depends on how the client comes. The client can come to you with like, I don't know what I need to do, and then you do the whole thing for them. Or like these two clients, we already have all this stuff that we worked on for 2 years, and then we work with their marketing department on that. So it's really how the client, it depends on the client and the type of project.
And you bring people to a marketing center, and that film is what you show them to really wow them. Maybe you shouldn't just blast it out and let everybody see it, because then they miss part of that story. Everything that we do is meant to be experienced and in some cases presented by people that are trying to sell something. Our stuff doesn't sell. As much as we like to think it, our stuff alone doesn't sell anything. It needs to be part of a presentation, a package. So I think that we sometimes, like I said, we try to get people to not just misuse a lot of these. So we're like, okay, well, let's do a little teaser of this film. Maybe we'll do it for free, so that you can maybe blast that out, or play it somewhere, and then people are going to be like, oh, what's that about? They're going to pick up a phone, or they're going to be driven to a marketing center, and then they get to experience the full thing. But you have them there. I mean, most of these transactions that we deal with, they're personal transactions. Like, there needs to be somebody who's trying to get you to sign a huge, $10 million lease for the next 10 years. So I think that it's a great question, and it's something that everybody here should be thinking of. It's like, my renderings, how are you going to use these renderings? Are they going to go on a brochure? Or a lot of our clients don't even know. They're like, I don't know. How should we use your renderings?
Yeah, to avoid that, back to your question, and it's perfect that you asked the question, because that's actually the next topic on the conversation is establish the end use of every single thing you do, right? And like Rodrigo said, clients sometimes don't even know how they're going to use things.
This is back in the days when people were spending a lot of money on crazy things to sell real estate.
We had like 6 months to do an animation.
Yeah. So this was a film that we did that all you need to know about the film is that the client agreed to have a 50-foot tall naked woman painted silver in the film, which
I'll get to it.
That doesn't happen anymore. So these are slightly more kind of artistic. There's a vibe to these storyboards. This is actually the work of that guy that I was mentioning. He's great with characters. This was a character-driven film. He draws action really well, and he really gives you a sense. He's a comic book artist, right? So he really gives you a sense of the sequence, the flow, camera angle. So a lot of what you see here is work that we sat down with him. We talked about these ideas. We didn't have a lot of preconceived notions about cameras, and so he himself figured out a lot of these cameras, and we ended up shooting almost exactly what he crafted for us. So that collaboration was pretty exciting.
So that's, again...
And we are not going to show this film.
The point, you can look at it online. The point being, that in a document like this one, you need to back up your ideas, your chicken scratch, with a little bit more, right? In the case of the real storyboards, it's almost not necessary, or it's not as necessary. You can still have it there, but the story is told in a much clearer way. There's already an intention for each shot. There's already a little bit of a mood to it that that the client can relate to. So you notice that these two don't have any like precedent imagery or like board, like mood board page at the beginning, like the City Point one and the other two storyboards. So a third example that I wanted to show you guys is the CG storyboard. And this, I have two of them. And I'll start with the easy one. It's a museum in Guatemala for the Mayan history, right? So we already had a very good 3D model at this point of the building. We were already doing renderings for it. And the client, these architects over under with these partners, there were a couple of other architectural firms involved, I don't remember their names right now, were super cool young guys willing to do whatever we wanted to do with both the renderings and the film. Unfortunately, the film has not moved forward, but it's a good example of what you can do once you have already your assets in there. And then it's not, I'm not as good at drawing like Rodrigo is, so this is the way I do them.
Wow, that's a low blow.
No, dude, come on. They're good drawings. So you have to, you do your research, your mood board inspiration, and very straightforward. You start, grabbing your basic model, V-Ray, sun and sky, some forest pack in there, and then start, putting some cameras together to explain the whole thing. A little brief explanation at the bottom, and that's pretty much it.
I always use the chapter, like the children's chapter book analogy. I mean, it's a perfect way to present, particularly if you're going to hand it off to somebody, to kind of walk them through. I mean, some people love the visuals, and ultimately the visuals are the thing that you're really selling. But a little bit of an explanation about, it could be goals, it could be an explanation of the movement or the activity that you hope to capture. I mean, it's trying to leave as little information unanswered for the client, but still not give away that sense of mystery, which in this case, it was about this beautiful building being carved out of the landscape.
Carried through and into the final film. So for a film like this, where the character action is kind of important in driving much of the story, it was really important to nail that in the previous phase. Show what those actions would be. One, for filming what we needed to get on the green screen so we weren't wasting time there, but then also to show this to the client ahead of time and get them to buy in. Because ultimately, if they're not on board with it or don't agree, then it doesn't make sense to actually film the characters and put them in there. So, they could see this edit up front and say, yeah, that's what we want to do. So then, it was a great roadmap that we could just follow throughout the rest of the process.
So we're going to talk today about one of the first things that ends up happening once we've gotten elements that are coming in from guys like Matt, who just gave you his talk about getting all of the assets together, the CG assets, because the animatics in many ways they're a proof of concept. We need to make sure that we get everything strung into a timeline so that it makes sense and that the vibe and the general mood of the piece is going to work and make sense for the end goals that we're going for our clients.
Yeah, often we don't have all the assets, obviously, when we're starting an animatic, but we just have to do our best to represent what the final film is going to look like. It saves a lot of time in the end if we work together at the beginning to make something that both internally and with the client, everyone's happy.
Right. So we can show you an example of an animatic we did for the Safti Astana project. And here we go.
So that was actually a pretty good-looking animatic. They don't always look like that. And remember how finished that look. But next we can show you what the final version looks like so that you can really compare and see just how far we got with the animatic and how that saved a lot of time, going back and forth with CG cameras to get the final look.
So how do we do this? One of the things I do is, first thing I do is I'll clean up all the context buildings, right? And then looking at the other pieces or the other assets, what I want to do is start identifying things that I can get rid of that are going to make importing in Max a problem. Specifically things I know that we're going to replace. So one of the first things are things like trees. You can come into these components. Things with a lot of polygons from SketchUp take a lot of time when they come into Max. So the first thing I do is I start to drill down into each of these sorts of things and delete out the stuff I don't need. I'll show you guys a little bit later how we use object replacer script to actually bring in things from our library, which are good models that we like to use in place of things like this, which, like for our models or for our scenes, we typically don't use a SketchUp tree because it doesn't necessarily look as good as a 3D tree that we have. So what we'll do is we'll get rid of the leaves but keep the trunk so we can use that placement as a thing to snap a new tree to with scripting. So I'd look at things like that and start deleting, all of those kind of things out. Or I would come in and, again, different files are set up differently, but I start to go in and delete out all the people, right? And get rid of all the things that I don't think we'll need. I'll clean out all the chairs, but keep a table because I'll replace the tables and chairs with a better model that we have. So learning little things like that or cleaning out little things like that can speed up your both exporting from SketchUp and also importing into Max. I know before we started to establish standards like this and we were just doing direct imports, it could take a day to export from SketchUp and a day to import, which is really slows down a production pipeline, especially if you're on a really tight schedule of 3 or 4 days to turn around a bunch of renderings. So we wanted to figure out a way to get it in and out as fast as possible. So we'll give it a second here to open, and while that's opening, I'll just show you. This is the in the next one you'll see the clean file, but this is actually what after the export standard that I show you, what's going to come into Max, which is essentially we export it from SketchUp by material, and then we bring it into Max, and I'll show you a really quick way that we can actually sort all the objects in the scene by material, and then we can start to break down each of those materials into the respective layers and be able to replace things.
To just one sec, to elaborate on that, we just imported a model with very complex geometries from Rhino, and there were lots of flipped normals all over the place. One thing you can do is in Rhino, weld all the vertices. Then when you bring it in, all the normals are going to be pointing at least in the same direction and not all over the place.
Yes, I was wondering. You show us this file, and when you were loading the all the surrounding area to the project, it took really long.
Yeah.
And I was wondering what happens when you send this to the rendering farm. You talk about the 50 rendering nodes, and how do you deal with that? When the 50 nodes are trying to access the same information. I mean, does it get clogged somewhere?
Yeah. So that's kind of a multi-branched question in the sense that deals a lot with deadline. This goes back for us to a little bit of a deadline and a back burner question, and sort of how your IT infrastructure works, which I'll give you the brief rundown, but I definitely not the expert on how our IT infrastructure, but deadline will allow you to it does a lot better job of really complex scenes, really large files, a lot of assets, and being able to manage how those go out to different machines at different times. It will stagger sending a job, like it won't send a job to 50 machines at the same time, because that's going to create a tremendous pull in the back end.
Yeah, Backburner will do that.
Yeah. Well, so that was, for us, another strategy that we did. So, or another selling point of Deadline is you can throttle that a little bit, and you can set sort of the number of machines that are going to pull a job initially, right? So it'll essentially offset those things. So you have a group of 5 machines that pull. They start queuing up and rendering. The next machines pull. The next machines pull, right? So it's managing all that stuff for you. So you don't have a render wrangler or some guy sitting at the computer sort of releasing or controlling which machines are rendering which thing at which time. So that for us is managed a lot by Deadline now. So.
Hi. Just looking at this scene, what type of trees are you using? Is it forest pack or just multi-scatter?
Yeah, so if we go back to the images here, so we initially started with forest pack for the context site. And again, in the idea of we were having trouble with forest pack embedded in XREFs through Deadline, with it dropping the forest packs at certain frames. One of the things you can do with the power of forest pack is actually lay out your forest, and then you can convert it to proxies. So essentially you use forest pack as like a
Just a
scatter
scatter
mechanism, right? And then embed your proxies. So in the XREF scenes of the site, all the objects are proxies. Some of them use forest pack to establish their position, but they're actually all proxies in the site file.
Inside the scene.
Yeah. On the buildings where we have a lot of detail and these sort of green roofs and these like parks and different things that the client was very interested in showing, this like very active, vibrant rooftops. Those are all actually forest packs in the master 3D scenes that sit with the buildings. So we were able to do forest pack in the main scene, just not in any XREFs.
Okay. What about because one of the problem we have in our studio is if we send to the farm some missing maps, especially if it's a very big scene, how do you put the maps on a single folder on each project?
Yeah, so each project has a maps folder, and then all maps and all each project in the 3D folder for that project contains all max scenes, all maps, all proxies for that project. And they should never, we're very strict about, they should never be linked to another project, because if you're altering, for proxies it's less important because generally you're not altering geometry. But if you're altering a material, it can create problems about someone for another project is going to render something and their wood's going to be orange and not brown, right?
So it's not taking the maps from the model library. It's on the folder on that particular project.
Exactly. Essentially, we run a library for maps and proxies for each project, right? We don't have a central thing that we use for all projects in the sense of rendering with it.
Is it stored also on the server or on a workstation for
everything?
For the
Everything's
artist?
on the server,
On the
and
server.
everything's mapped to the server. And we generally always use UNC file pathing.
Okay.
So, and that's something that once you set it, once you set that in max, it'll carry through. So you want to do this convert file paths to UNC. You want to make sure everything in your file from start to finish is in UNC, because if you use map network drives, you can't DR. You have to use, or here at least, we can't DR. So we need to use the UNC, which is the hard code for the server, and then the actual volume share. So everything is UNC, and we're very strict about if you open a file and there's a missing map, it's your job to fix it, right? We don't want anything coming up with a missing map or missing proxy, because that's the first indication that it could cause a problem down the line.
And so each time we turn these on, we're going through and just checking for balances, which is why we turn them on like one at a time, make sure it looks correct, and then move on, or else it can be hard to tweak, multiple lights at the same time, see what's affecting what. Then we go through and turn on the garage, and they have some uplighting over here to get some ivy. And then we have the lights up front. We wanted to get some nice catch on the grass there, which I think turned out pretty cool in the final. And then the tree lights. And so one of the things I did for this one was make use of the V-Ray Light Select. It's one of my favorite elements. So I have a V-Ray Light Select for the trees themselves, so we can go through and mess with that later. Also did that for the downlights in Hayworth. And then the next part was the atmosphere. So this is the V-Ray fog pass that we just did in a separate file. I wanted to do a fog pass here instead of a Z-depth because I wanted to get the all the lights basically, instead of just actual fog. And I wanted to make sure that it faded out as it went up. So this is actually a really simple setup. It's pretty much default. I just checked on use or bounce GI. I could set it up right now. It's so simple. Where are you at? Environment. V-Ray environment fog. So I just did the fog distance something far, so like 500, 600. And then fog height, like 40 feet. Scatter bounces, 100. Make sure all lights are on. Super simple setup. Just do it in your own file, and then you can save out the V-Ray atmosphere element, which holds the alpha in it. It's really nice. Okay, so now that we have this open, I'll show you the light material for the ceilings. So I've got a lot of warmth in there, and then I just painted in. So I painted in the warmth on these lights down here. And then punched it a little bit in areas over here, just to get the nice warmth, warm hot spots. A little balancing, little vignette, and we're done. That's it for that PSD.
Yes, one question. So basically, you took the image from the modeling until you finished it in Photoshop, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and is there anybody in your office who takes care of all the images, so they are consistent?
No, we powwow after we do a set. So like Dan and I and Nika will take all three of our images that we split out from a single project and look at them together and make sure that they work with each other. Another thing we do, or when Carlos and I used to work together, he's over there, a lot more frequently, is we look at them all in Bridge and do those final consistency corrections in Bridge itself so that we can see everything together.
UV offsets, you're actually controlling, they're actually flipped and varied in a bunch of different ways. So the next step then is to take this particular thing and figure out how we can actually drive more, right? So how we can take that particular map and add maybe 4 or 5 different variations of the texture or the color. So to do this, I'm actually going to pop into Slate and show how I set this up with some linked hierarchies under Slate. So I can eventually then add additional maps later on. So one of the things I want to take out of my texture here is I want to instance all my cropping placements. So I'm going to pull out all of these into Bezier floats really quick. So they'll store that information. And then one thing I always do, I always set my blur as close as I can get to 0. So that's another one that I always pull out. So I'll pull out those 5 for now. And let's say we actually wanted to put a bump map into this as well. Again, in Slate, you can just shift and drag, and it'll instance all of those controllers. So our crop and our diffuse and our crop and our will be bump map will all be the same. So we can then just link in our bump. So you'll see that our bump is in the same location. And then we can just drive that up here into your main map. So now once we have this set up, we need to look at an approach on how we can actually set up some material variation. So to do that, I'm going to copy this material, and I'm going to put it into a multi-sub material. And we'll open up this multi-sub. I'm going to set the number to 2 right now. And we're going to, so this multi-sub gives us 2 different materials. And then what I need to add to make this work on the Mac side is I need to add a modifier called material by element. And there's 2 different ways to use this. One is a random variation based on a number distribution. The other one is to actually figure out how you want those materials distributed across the geometry. So I will take this now and apply it. There won't be any change to this scene at the moment because my second material is still the same material. So let's show that map. And what I can do then is come into this material, and I can zoom in here on one of my other little 8-bit color graphics. And you'll see that now, once that crop is updated, and again, because we copied that, the secondary crop of the bump is also brought to the bump map because we've linked those parameters. We now have different variation. And so now if we wanted to list frequency, I did a light and a dark. So we could say that we want significantly less dark materials. We can tone that down. And then correspondingly, you need to manage adding the other one up. I guess I've never checked if this automatically defaults to 100 at some point. I always make sure I do the math so there's no leftover pieces. And then quickly, just with what we've shown, again, dragging our whole layer stack, pulling down, and I grabbed a little too much there. Let's deselect him.
And seeing if it was worth it for us to carry our Kino set, or if we were better off with just using reflectors. And so here in the first test, we have just sunlight without any fill light. And then if you watch on the right side, or on Alex's left side, you'll see a fill come in a little bit. Okay. And these are, at first, just 10-second clips. Yeah, it's playing. So.
The beginning, yeah.
Yep.
We need to censor.
Alex is a native Bostonian, so he curses a lot. We have to cut him out. So that's without fill light again. And then there are 2 different lights in the Kino set. There's a blue, cool light and a warm light. So we were trying to figure out what worked best outside. And we actually figured out that the cool light did. And now this is with reflectors.
Stop for audio sync. And on this take, we decided to harness the power of the sun. 7.3 million miles away or something like that is where this is coming from. And we get the card at about a 45-degree angle or so right now. The soft white diffuse side of the bounce card. Hey, we're shooting here! We're shooting here! MBTA. So anything else we need to tell him, Chris? And that's no, now it's with the card removed. And the card's back. Card's gone. Okay, now we're going to the shiny side. I think the technical term is it's literally blinding me. I can't see shit. It's gone now, and it's back. It's back. We couldn't possibly subject our interview subjects to this.
So what we learned from that is that the Kinos, if you have access to a plug, they did a great job. We didn't think that they would give us any fill light, but they actually did a really great job of giving us a nice even fill light. But also we learned that reflectors they'll give you way more. And so if you're trying to do light and quick, reflectors are still a great option.
And you should always try to get the best. If you do have a big budget, you should always try to get the best lenses, which are usually prime lenses. But then you have to be prepared to hire maybe an AC that's going to be there to pull focus for you. There's a lot of things that go into it. Whether it's Zeiss lenses or whether it's Fuji lenses, I mean, it doesn't matter. They're all great, but we use Canon professional lenses, the L series lenses, which are the nicer versions of a lot of their kind of more generic lenses, and those are sharper. They have better stabilization. So it's whatever you can get your hands on, and oftentimes we'll rent if we need to get a really nice lens, because it's obviously a lot cheaper than buying something that you're going to use once a year.
And they're versatile too. I mean, like we can go and throw those lenses on our cameras and go get great backplates for things. So as far as an investment perspective, not having to go and get crazy prime lenses is a good thing.
That shot was had a move in real life, and we had to match that move in 3D. So the black and white markers are for tracking the shot.
So when you have all these different gadgets and all the studio that you have at your disposal, and you're putting together a proposal, I mean, let me rephrase that. When you're putting together a proposal and you don't have all these different tools, you're always trying to think to what extent you're going to use elements that you don't have on your studio, because you'll need to either rent them or buy them, and they'll need to be included to some extent on the proposal. But once you have them on your studio, how do you account for the use of them?
Well, you do. I mean, it's you have to use them, and someone had to pay for them, so it's part of the budget, right? But again, there's a perception that we may have this arsenal of things in the back. We don't. We have a few cameras. We have the red. We have the lights that you see on top of you. A few extra lights, and
some Home Depot
and like
lights
5 lenses.
if you
right?
run out of stuff.
That's it. That's really all you need for what we do. Could you have more? Yes. Do you really need it? No. I'll go back to my previous point of the green screen. We used to have 3 lights, 1 camera, and that linoleum painted green for 5 years, all right? And it worked out perfectly well. You work within your constraints. Your walk cycles are shorter, but no one cares because you plan your shots based on those limitations. So now we can have longer walk cycles, and that's cool. But again, no one cares about that.
So we have another breakdown that Casey will talk about that well, I'll just open it up and I'll let him start talking about it.
So it's pretty much the same process that Alex just explained. So here we got the beauty pass. This is a shot Dave went through before. So this is with all the elements like reflections, the dirt mat, and the mats all put together in one shot. So every green screen is unique. So because it's unique, there's a different set of problems that we encounter every time we open one up, or no matter how similar the shot is in the back, there's always something we have to do, something different we have to do to make it integrate right. So with this one, you see that the green of the chair doesn't match the green in the backplate, like in the background. So it's a little dark because she's sitting on it. And the green on the table is pretty different too. So with this one, I had to separate her hands, her torso and her head. Because she's so front and center, we wanted to keep all the detail that we could. So yeah, so yeah, you can just go. I just explained it. So here, you see that her hair, like if we usually use like edge blur to blend her edges, green screen edges, but since she's so front and center, we wanted to keep those edges really sharp. So that's why I had to break her up into 3 parts. So if you keep going. So there's the 3D people. The depth of field. So, like Alex said, this was like a period piece. We were like going from past to future. This is one of the past shots. And that's a vignette effect that kind of adds to that that 50s vibe. And then the film noise there's like multiple purposes for using it. We usually use it at the end of the film, like we put it on top of everything, just to keep the noise consistent. But for this shot, since it's like a 50s vibe kind of shot, we wanted to really kind of bump that up.
So Vasily also happens to be a music video editor, so that helps. And I think we approach, so a film, when a director works on a long film, they give it to somebody to score, right? And so they do inject the music and a lot of the sound after the fact, and then they record Foley and all that stuff. But we have to approach our movies as a short form kind of music video, and where the music is integral to, you know, the initial sort of story even that you pitch. So there's 2 very different ways of thinking about it, and in our case, because most of what we're producing is anywhere from 60 seconds to 3 minutes and 5 minutes, it lands more in that sweet spot of a short form music video. So I think a lot of the things that you'll see here are techniques that apply mostly to that. So we watch a lot of film, and obviously for other things, you know, like cinematography. But when it comes to editorial, it's often music videos, long-form commercials, where the music is sort of established either immediately because in a music video it's driving the story, or in a commercial it's informing something because it needs to kind of capture somebody's attention right away. So that's the approach, and it helps that this guy actually does music videos himself on the side, and can speak, you know, can speak that language.
I wanted to try something really fast, which is I've got 3 tracks, and I instantly know for each track what that would be the best, what client would appreciate the most. And so if we're looking at luxury residential, if we're looking at, you know, someone who's trying to sell office space and someone who has high-end retail, I'd love if you guys could try to figure out, of these 3 tracks, who wants which track, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so we'll do a little trivia game here.
Any ideas? Yes. So, I mean, that's what I always go for when I'm trying to find a song, not to be
Can you repeat this?
It should
Can you repeat what the answer was?
Oh, I'm sorry. The answer was luxury residential. Because while not being so obvious that it's cheesy, you should have an emotional feeling and a connection to the type of project you're selling.
It's dramatic. It's, you know, and Grant, this is we're grossly generalizing a lot of this. You know, there may be high-end residential in Miami that wants like club music, but the idea here is that you, after you do this enough times, you have a sense of what kind of music you're going to go. I mean, a lot of what we do is stock libraries, right? So, and there's millions of songs out there, so you have to immediately edit yourself so that the search doesn't become something that's going to take you weeks to do. And a lot of times we'll go through this exercise internally before we even do storyboards or things like that, so that we can use the music to inspire camera movement and things of that nature. Any ideas?
Actually, that's what I would use. Oh, yep. Yes,
No,
Carlos?
Carlos, you can't answer.
It could be retail. It would depend on, I think, what type of retail.
No, I'm
What
kidding.
were you going to say? Oh, you're going to answer? So that would be something that I think for a lot of our clients would be great for the corporate world, because it's happy, because it's inspirational,
And it's not corporate, right? So the trick there is a lot of our corporate stuff, like if you watch corporate videos, they tend to be very dry. And so this is a way to kind of take them a little bit away from their comfort zone without going crazy like maybe the next one that you're going to play.
So this is the type of song I always try to pitch for every movie. And Rodrigo and Carlos only let me do this sometimes. But this is obviously going to evoke feelings of a catwalk and fashion shows. So that's what we would use for, a high-end fashion piece. Quick editing and anyway. Really simple exercise, but as far as music is concerned, I think it's vitally important. Like Rodrigo said, I do edit music videos, so maybe I care about that more than most editors. But when you
Have you had any opportunity, or is there any specific situation where you see the value of original music being
Yeah, we're
composed
gonna
for-
get to that.
Yep. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean,
get to that now?
sure. I guess we can answer that question right now. So one of the examples that we have here, and it comes up literally every other project that we do in New York. If you guys do work with New York developers or brokers, they're very egotistical. They're New Yorkers, right? And they love New York. They love New York, right? So 9 times out of 10, we'll sit in a room and we'll talk about music, and they'll want this song.
Designed to accommodate 40 million passengers annually, this environmentally conscious project will parallel the dramatic projected growth of Abu Dhabi's population in the years to come. An inspiring landscape guides you towards the airport's main entrance. An iconic structure over 50 meters in height is a captivating sight and a prelude to an exciting journey. With one of the largest spanning arches in the world, the vast uninterrupted entrance space with its exquisite detailing is a welcoming symbol for hospitality and generosity.
Here for a second. So a lot of the voiceover, we actually help write the voiceover, is literally telling you, right? So it's like verbatim captioning what you're seeing on the screen. Some of it is augmenting what you're hearing, like they're telling you it's 50 meters. Okay, that's great. We pitched this movie initially it's a huge airport in Abu Dhabi. Their current airport, is and was and is crappy, and it doesn't work for them. So they wanted to sort of sell the drama, right? And we were like, okay, well, let's think about what happens at airports, right? And most people hate going to the airport, so let's focus on like this peaceful experience, this really relaxing, seamless sort of experience. So we pitched them a creative that took somebody who was arriving and somebody who was leaving, departing, And we talked about creating this sort of juxtaposition of both of those sequences happening at the same time. And at some point in the film, maybe they cross paths, right? So they were like, yeah, but no. Let's do a walkthrough, and somebody's going to narrate what people are seeing, and so that's fine. You know, it's when the sheik says something and he wants something, that's what you have to do, right? So this is sort of our own internal, again, same shots. We didn't produce anything different. Our own internal rendition of capturing those two moments that are much more interesting and much more personal. The architecture is still there, it's still beautiful, but with a different music track and a different sort of configuration, arrangement of shots, you sort of start to see how the story becomes more personal. So just a different way to kind of approach the same assets and create something that has a very different feel. One feels more like a promotional, commercial sort of thing, and the other one feels more like something that you would show an actual visitor to say, hey, this airport is going to do everything for you. It's going to feel seamless. It's not really. We all know what airports are like, but it's about trying to capture that effortless sort of relaxed feel.
So you've seen, you know, we've showed you pretty much for this project, we showed you planning of shoots, of B-roll, of storyboarding and concepts and stuff like that. So this is pretty much the final film with and without the color correction. I'll keep it small because it doesn't play that well. So there we go.